So, I was a fairly violent kid growing up. I wasn't just violent in where the white parents didn't want their kids to hang out with me. No. I was so violent that the black parents didn't even want their kids to hang around me. Like, we had whole ass family friends that no longer wanted to come over because I was a bad influence on their child. Like, I remember back when I was 7, I tried to fight a family friend because she said her favorite colors were red and pink and mine was blue. In my mind, I was thinking I gotta beat some sense into her so that she can understand that blue is the superior color. I was crippin'. I still am. By the way, I don't associate with Crips. Do not pull up on me. If you point a gun in my face, I will cry. But somewhere between 8th and 9th grade, I just stopped being violent. Relatives like to have their theories of, oh, he just calmed down. But honestly, it's because I went into 9th grade and my bullies stopped being shorter than me and became taller and older than me. At that point, there was no more, oh, I could fight back. It was just, if I raise my voice, they'll probably kill me. But before that change happened, there was an altercation that occurred that was so crazy back in middle school that to this day, if someone sees me from middle school, they will bring it up. Now you may be wondering, what is this fight/altercation that niggas still bring up 10 years later? Check it, right? Back in 7th grade on a crisp Monday morning, we were tasked with making a collage out of scraps out of a magazine. You know, typical middle school art bullshit. And our teacher, who I'll call Mr. Mack, set down a bunch of magazines in a pile, and it was probably the size of 3 48-inch monitors stacked up on top of each other. That's such a weird measurement. Why the fuck did I say that? Anywho, when I finally decided to go and get a magazine, I picked out a National Geographic and set it on a table next to me. And I started looking for another one before I went back to my desk. So as I was scanning for another magazine, some scrawny 12-year-old white kid who dressed as if someone had shot him with a gun that had the year 2011 written on it came by and took my National Geographic. Now, I didn't notice that he had taken it at first until I had finally found a magazine I was looking for and went, "Where the fuck my National Geographic?" So then I looked around the room until I found the only nigga holding a National Geographic in his hand. Now, I could have let it go. But this is 12-year-old Campoleon we're talking about. You could have played me that bullshit song from Frozen for multiple hours and I still wouldn't understand what the phrase "let it go" meant. So I had to walk up to him and instigate. So I walked up to the kid whose name was John and I said, "Hey, that magazine was the one I picked out. Can I have it back?" He looked up at me from that magazine like I was insane and then replied to me saying, "There's other magazines in the pile, just go use those." Yeah, at this point, it wasn't even about the magazine anymore. I just wasn't gonna get bitched on like that. But I didn't want to start an issue just yet. So I asked him if I could have it back again. And he replied in the most snarky way imaginable, "Yeah, after I'm done using it." Now, I was mildly okay with this response because it meant that I was gonna get it back. I was wrong. See, I went and asked him 2 more times after this and he said the same thing of, "Wait till I'm done." So clearly it was no longer about the magazine for him. So at this point, because the word reasonable was not in my vocabulary yet, I went and snitched on him to the teacher. And the teacher ain't give a fuck. That nigga looked at me like a sickness that needed to be eradicated. He was probably thinking, who is this nigga complaining to at 8 a.m. in the morning about a goddamn magazine? It ain't me. Get the fuck out my face. But because he valued his job, he just instead said out loud, "Wait your turn." As you could probably guess, my turn never came. And because of that, the moment the bell rang to tell us to go to second period, only one mantra rang throughout every fiber of my being. And I was, "Fuck John, all my homies hate John." I was saying that shit in my head in classes, at lunch, at home, and even as a lullaby to fall asleep. And the next day, I spoke to that nigga the same way you would speak to a wall after you stub your toe on it, calling him, "You stupid bitch," and "fuck you," and whatever non-creative string of expletives I could merge together. John, of course, did not hold back and returned fire. A couple of days later, it became Thursday, and I still felt like he had the one up on me. So I did what kids at that age with anger problems would do. I told him I was sorry for bothering him. I got you, nigga. No, I started plotting my revenge. So I seen this nigga John walking with his friends during lunch and ran up behind him and snatched his trucker hat off his head and ran away. And while I was doing that, my friend Carlos went to go get me some ketchup packets that I'd asked for. After that, we rendezvoused at a square concrete planter filled with bark and dirt. And then I filled John's hat up with ketchup and smeared every inch of it with that shit and shoved it into the planter, making sure that it was half buried because I knew that nigga was following me and wanted him to find it. I wanted him to know what I did. Was that evil? Yes. Did I regret it? No. Would I have done it again? Abso-fucking-lutely. So later that day in fourth period, I felt like he had no reason to do anything back to me. I felt like we were even, you know? But just to make sure, I went and told John's friend Kalechi that he shouldn't mess with me if he knows what's good for him. And then I went home smiling. I felt like the nigga who farted in class and then convinced the rest of the class that it was the nigga next to me who farted. However, when I got to art class the next day, I could feel that my celebrations were a bit, premature. And because of this, I watched John like a hawk through the first half of the class, and he seemed to be moving normal, not a vengeful bone in his body. But see, here's the thing about bones that my dumbass did not factor in. You can't see bones through skin. So eventually I just let my guard down. And our task for that day was to paint some bullshit, and I was really getting into what I was making. John, however, had been biding his time, and at one point he had gotten up to go empty the water from his table's bucket that they used to wash off their brushes, and he went over to the sink and just did nothing. He just stood there, menacingly. Then, with that same bucket full of dirty ass paint water, he walked in a path that wouldn't allow me to notice him and soon stood behind me. His stupid ass probably thought he was moving like Minato. Then this conniving fuck turned the bucket upside down and all the water spilled on me. I looked up from my now ruined work and knew immediately who did it. And the only thought in my head in that moment was,
you wanna die?
Now, I was obviously soaking wet, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that the hate and anger that fueled me in that moment would have been enough to evaporate the water off my body. I stood up and clenched my fists and took a deep ass breath. Everyone was staring at us in the class. It was so silent that you probably could have heard a bird fart outside. I then asked the very infamous line to my teacher, the one that people who were in that class love reminding me of. Mr. Mack, can I beat his ass? No, I'm not joking when I say I said that. In fact, I don't even remember asking it as politely as I did because at that point I had blacked out in anger. But people said I sounded so kind, like I was asking to go to the bathroom or something. Now, the teacher, still stunned about what just happened, said nothing. I took that nigga's silence as a yes. So, with the power of Aku from Samurai Jack fueling my right arm, I gave that nigga the meanest right hook of the century. I'm talking about they had to play in the background to really match the energy that was happening in that room. After that right hook to his face, I started punching him in the chest, then he fell to the ground and I started kicking him. And then that's when the teacher actually intervened. He ran up to me and bear hugged me and dragged me out the class. Now, I got suspended for 5 days and he got suspended for 3. And the thing I didn't know was that in my school district, the maximum amount of days that you can get suspended for is 5. And if I had known that at the time, I would have ran back into the classroom after getting dragged out to go and beat his ass some more. The crazy thing is, when I came back to school the following week, niggas heralded me like I was some sort of champion, like I just fought off 2 tigers. But no, I was just a fool who took a small issue too far. Now, with all my storytime videos, I must issue a warning. Do not do what I did. I am not responsible for you reenacting my buffoonery in your classes. With that being said, bye.